Everybody, welcome to PubKey.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, just for the record, we are at the DC PubKey.
We're at
For
the
those
DC
of you who
PubKey.
know the New York PubKey, this is 10x, 10x of the
Yeah.
New York PubKey.
10 times the stress, 10 times the money.
And 10 times the fun, as
Yes,
they say. So if you're in the DC area, I highly recommend that you stop by the PubKey here in DC. Great place, great people, great vibes, a lot of Bitcoin conversations,
yeah.
but not only Bitcoin conversations.
Bitcoin and Bitcoin adjacent. Tonight, we're very fortunate. Started talking to our friends at the National Endowment for Democracy, and we learned that a lot of the friends of friends, being HRF, are going to be in town. So we got this event together, and tonight we're going to be talking about pathways to freedom. And I'd love for all of you to introduce yourselves, but there's a common thread here. There's been activist fights that have hit on a personal level quite deep. I think that's sort of the common thread for all the speakers that we're going to have tonight. We have half of the panel here with us now. So just please take a second to introduce yourselves. We'll start with you, Berta.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. I am Berta Valle. I am a Nicaraguan human rights activist. And also, I am the co-founder of Political Prisoner Support Team, which is a program that the World Liberty Congress have to support family of political prisoners, but also former political prisoners. And also, I am part, and this is really excited, of the Decentralized Democratic Resistance, which is a program that we have the World Liberty Congress, where we share decentralized technologies with activists around the world. And there is where I help teaching about Bitcoin, Nostern, and other technologies.
Fantastic.
So yeah, that's what I do.
I love it. Anaïse? Please.
Hi, my name is Anaïse Kanimba. I'm from Rwanda, but I live in exile in Washington, D.C. today. I became a human rights defender when my father was kidnapped and then illegally detained in Rwanda in 2020. And with the support of many people, including HRF and Berta and Leopoldo, we were able to secure the release of my father in 2023. And since then, I've continued to dedicate my time to support political prisoner, but also think of freedom tech tools that can help activists and human rights defender. And this came from an experience my family had when we were advocating for my dad, and we were surveilled by the government of Rwanda with Pegasus, which is a spyware that has access to all your information and on your phone. So, I think it's really important that us activists and human rights defender have the tools that we need to protect ourselves and to do our work. And so this is what I focus on these days. And I'm with Berta as well in the decentralized resistance.
Awesome. And Leopoldo?
No,
please.
thank you, Thomas. Thank you. It's an honor for me to be with Berta and with Anaïs and with you. My name is Leopoldo Lopez. I'm from Venezuela. I was mayor of Caracas for 8 years, and I was not allowed to run for office, so I started a movement focused on nonviolent action and social work. And long story short, we called for protest against Maduro in the year 2014, and that took tens of thousands of people to the streets, and it took me to prison. So I spent 7 years on and off between solitary confinement, house arrest, prison, and some time at the Spanish embassy. Then I escaped Venezuela against my will because I never wanted to do that. Like neither of us, we never chose to be living outside our country, but we were forced to do so. So in 2021, I had the blessing of meeting fantastic people. People like myself, like Berta, like Anaïs, like Masih Alinejad from Iran, like Ari Kasparov from Russia, and many others. And we decided to create something that didn't exist. We actually researched to see if there was an organization that was gathering all of the freedom fighters globally. It didn't exist, so we created the World Liberty Congress, that it's an alliance of freedom fighters, democracy defenders, badasses, troublemakers, great people who have the capacity, and this is very important, to keep a good spirit while fighting for freedom. And that's a mantra that we have. We cannot be in the bad negativity position. We always want to have positivity, engagement, hope, because at the end, our fight for freedom needs to be a hopeful fight. I mean, if you're fighting for something that you believe is the dawn of a new era, is the light of lights, is the best you can bring to people, you need to do it with a big heart. And that's what we try to bring to this movement. And I'm very glad that we are here at PubKey. Thomas is a great advocate. He's a Bitcoiner, as all of you know. But now he's a freedom fighter Bitcoiner.
Yeah.
And we are very glad
Yes.
that the freedom fighters, democracy defenders from the world, you all have now a place to come and feel comfortable here in Washington, D.C., and also in New York City, and many other places.
Many other places to
Many
come,
other places to come.
absolutely.
So Thomas, it's great to be with you, man.
Well,
Thank
Thomas,
you.
you're part now of the World Liberty Congress too, so.
No, he's a great
Flatter
friend.
me. I'm like back office support at
There
best.
you go, there you go.
You know, these are heavy days. So for the last couple of years, we've supported the Oslo Freedom Forum in Oslo, Norway, the flagship HRF event, and we kind of just host drinks at the end of the night because got to blow off a little bit of steam because the day is so heavy. And keeping that hope and optimism and getting people together and laugh, that's sort of how I slot in. So I wouldn't. Maybe I don't know. And maybe I'm more of a supporter. I don't know if I'm a fighter yet.
No, you are, man, because you know the fighting spirit. It's a spirit. I mean, it doesn't mean that you need to be at the front lines. It doesn't mean that you need to have a shield or a sword. It just means an attitude.
Yeah.
It means an attitude of defiance of the status quo where people don't have freedom. And if that's where you fit, if you don't feel comfortable in a space, in a country, in a regime. Where there's no freedom, you're a freedom fighter. And people contribute in different ways. Some people write poetry, other people write music, other people host events, other people are at the front lines, other people throw rocks. So different people do different things, but we are all freedom fighters.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, PubKey kind of came out of a sense of frustration that the Bitcoin community and Bitcoin adjacent technologies were terribly misunderstood. Mainstream media doesn't cover a lot of these stories, even though they really should be covering these stories. So our very first sponsor that stepped up and saw what we were trying to build with PubKey was Alex Gladstein and the crew at HRF, which we were, very grateful for, and we continued that project together. But I want to go back a little bit to the roots of Bitcoin. Why Bitcoin? Why these freedom technologies? Why are they so important in 3 different countries and 3 different struggles? What brought you to Bitcoin? How do you leverage it? And what's been successful, and also what hasn't been successful? One thing that we try to do that HRF does really well is get the developers side by side with the activists, because it really helps developers actually build towards something. So from your perspective, why Bitcoin?
Yeah. Well, let me start. In my case, I learned about Bitcoin actually at the Oslo Freedom Forum.
Awesome.
I was advocating for the release of my husband, Felix Maradiaga. He was in prison for 2 years in Nicaragua in horrible conditions. And before his imprisonment, what the regime did is that, they persecuted us and they charged him about, crazy charges of terrorism and narco trafficking, all these things that they do to stop dissidents. And because of that, they used the law to confiscate everything from us. So in a second, all our bank accounts were frozen and they were confiscated. So our life savings were taken away. Our, everything. We couldn't use a credit card.
Yeah.
Everything. So when I went to this event. This was back in 2021. And I heard about Bitcoin, and I didn't understand the technical part, but when they say that this was money that no one can get from us, I say that's what we need. So I started learning more about it, and I was so lucky to have Alex also guiding me on how to learn. And then now I realize that this technology, we say it's a tool to fight financial repression. And it's a tool because I've seen how activists around the world are using it to mobilize resources, to send humanitarian aids in a context where it's so hard because there is surveillance, because they don't have access to banking, where it's even dangerous to give your personal information to anyone, right? So for me, in my experience, particularly working in Nicaragua, that it's really, really close right now, it's a way to protecting also our identity. So, for example, in Nicaragua, yes, you can say remittances, right?
Remittances.
Remittances.
Yeah.
But you have to give your information. So if a family of political prisoner go to, first, we don't know if they have a bank account, right? But if they go to, let's say, Western Union, they have to give their information. And one of the questions is who is sending that money? And if there's a connection or they suspect, this family member of political prisoners can also be arrested just because of that, right? So the opportunity of sending peer-to-peer transaction, it's very powerful. Now, what is still a challenge is adoption, of course. So yes, the family received the humanitarian aid, and then the question is how can they spend that inside the country, particularly because they need to buy food or pay their rent. So there's where we have been using different ways, but at least now we have proven that for humanitarian aid, it's something safe, fast, and it protects the identity of the person.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It is a tool. I mean, at its core, Bitcoin is a internet protocol. It's a communication protocol. Money is a form of communication in many ways as well. And if you have control over what people can and cannot say in that communication sense, that censorship is a very, very powerful tool to withhold. So it's a freer, more open communication protocol that I always really find fascinating. And we'll get to Nostr in a second as well, because we got another one on the way. But Anaïse, please, why Bitcoin?
Well, so I think everything that Berta said I can definitely relate to for my context in Rwanda, being a very closed society where everyone lives in fear and people are not able to, even a husband and a wife won't speak about politics. So last thing you know, if you're going to receive money to give for a family political prisoner, that can also be a problem. Another big thing too for us is that we cannot assemble. We cannot assemble to get together, and to assemble, you also need money, and the flow of money is controlled. So I saw Bitcoin also as a tool to really get money into my country, to really do the work that we're not able to do when everyone is really spying on you, telling on you, there's no in between. And furthermore, in Africa, I think more than 40 countries are autocratic countries. We deal a lot with inflation. So it may not be a place where, the government is out there taking every single person from the street to prison, but they are devaluing the money and making the life of the people very difficult. So if you have any savings and you might lose your money if the government is controlling and the government is affecting its value. And that is happening in many places around the continent. And so I was very curious. Also, my background comes in development. I'm always thinking about how do you grow our economies? How do you grow our country? How are people more resilient? And Bitcoin, when I also was introduced to Bitcoin at the Oslo Freedom Forum. My first time, I was very confused. These guys were lost. The second time I go, I'm like, maybe they have something. I did pay attention, and I learned all of these things, and I saw how it can really help my people. But then I realized that where is the story on this? Because everything that I've been exposed to about Bitcoin in general was bad, scam, scary, don't get there. And for the first time, I hear a different narrative. And then at that event, I met developers who are building these tools that you're talking about. And now I realized there was a different story to tell. And so I've working really hard through the Africa Bitcoin Institute to tell the story of the African story of Bitcoin. What is being developed? What are the challenges? And I completely agree with Berta. Today, the challenge is off-ramping. How do you actually get to use their Bitcoin, right? How do you get your aunt and your uncle to also do that? And
it's not easy.
It's not easy. But the good thing is that people are excited and they're building and they're developing. They're trying to find these, fill these gaps. And that story is not being told as well, too.
Yeah.
And so I'm just really excited to be able to tell the story through my research, tell the story through our lives as freedom fighters who are using Bitcoin, so people can learn that there's something out there that can be useful. So
the potential to preserve purchasing power,
Yes.
preserve wealth is extremely powerful.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't get coverage. It's very frustrating. We had a journalist, very nice journalist, came into PubKey. He was at the event that we hosted last week with Obi. and he wanted to write a story. He's currently writing the story, but he came in, and the premise of the story was the price of Bitcoin is down so much, PubKey must be suicidally depressed. And he came in, and it was the exact opposite. Bitcoiners here at PubKey, we don't really talk about the price. It's sort of irrelevant. So I think that sometimes that gets used. The volatility cuts against the preservation of wealth and purchasing power at a surface level, but digging in and having that conversation gets far more complicated, conveying those concepts to other people. But Leopoldo, same question for you. Like, why Bitcoin? What drew you to it, and how do you see it being effective in Venezuela?
In Venezuela and beyond, I have been a victim of financial apartheid for the past maybe 20 years, at least the past 18 years. What does that mean? That I couldn't have a bank account in my country, that my movement was not able to register and to have a bank account, that we needed to figure out ways of transferring resources that was ineffective because we had a movement with many people, and many times we had to deploy resources to thousands of people, and if we didn't have the financial system to allow us to do that, we needed to do it through either cash or other means that ended up being ineffective. So then comes crypto at large, and then Bitcoin specifically. In the year 2020, there's a lot to the story, but I'll go to the part that is significant. We had the opportunity to use funds that were freezed from the regime to support people in Venezuela. 2020 was the year of COVID. So we wanted to help nurses and doctors at the front lines. But we had a challenge. How do we send resources? We had the money, we had the people, but we didn't have the means to get the money to the people. So we figured out that the way to do it was through a stable coin. And that's how we started. And we were able to get the first ever Treasury OFAC license in 2020 that had the word cryptocurrency and stablecoin in order to support almost 80,000 medical doctors and nurses. And the program was mega successful. It was successful because we were able to do it in spite of all of the attempts of the regime to take down the website, to criminalize the people. It was successful because it was transparent. We said we had almost 80,000 people, and we were able to deliver $100 every month to nurses and doctors that otherwise were earning $5 and $3 per month. So you can imagine the impact that that had on those people that were at the front lines. So that was the beginning of getting acquainted with the massive impact that this could have in my world, because my world, like Anaïse and Berta's world, is the world of activists, people who are fighting at the front lines, and it's a numbers game. It's a challenge that requires a lot of people, because how do you challenge an autocratic regime if you don't have weapons? With people. To do what? To do two things, basically, to protest and to vote. Those are the two things that you organize for. And you need resources to do this effectively. If you have an election, you need resources to mobilize, to get the vote out, to get people to get to the voting booth, to make sure that the people have food and gasoline to stay throughout the day. So it requires resources. And the regimes know this, and that's why they cut the finances of the movements. And this is also true for anything that these regimes don't like. So that's how I became acquainted. I was a political prisoner for many years. Then I had to leave my country at the end of 2020. And I had the blessing of meeting people like Berta and like Anaïse, because Berta's husband, Felix, was in prison. Anaïse's father was also in prison. But there are thousands of people like us. So we decided to come together and to create something that would support our efforts in each one of our countries, understanding the large differences amongst us, but understanding what could be the things that could work in each one of our countries. And Bitcoin is one of them. So yes, off-ramping, as Anaïs and Berta have said, is a challenge, but it's doable. So just one example. We needed to support in Africa the efforts of a friend of all of ours, Bobby Wine, great leader, rapper, made into a leader of Uganda, great person, great movement. But again, he was a victim of financial apartheid. So what was the answer? Well, how to get Bitcoin? He had, and his team, they didn't know how to use it. So we sent some of the people that work with Anaïs. Anaïs was involved in this, and they went to Uganda, and they were able to figure out just a technical way to, with one click, to solve the off-ramping problem, which means that you can take Bitcoin and convert it to mobile money. 90% of the transactions in Africa are done by mobile money. So people in Africa are used to paying with their phones. So what we needed to create was the bridge between Bitcoin and that mobile money. And we were able to do it. So we were able to deploy support for thousands of people using this technology. So at the end, what I think is the challenge creates the solution to the problem.
You go. Yeah.
So
I think there's, let me jump in because this is where I get excited about, is that there is this opportunity to create, right? To solve problems. And having the opportunity to be in the ecosystem, having what you mentioned, right? HRF getting together developers with activists, with miners, with, it's just a great opportunity. And it's actually interesting because, again, this is kind of, how do you say, prueba y error? Like...
trial and error.
Trial and error, thank you. Trial and error. And then you find that that solved the problem. And the other thing is that, of course, different regions, different cultures, different dynamics. So in this process, we also have learned that maybe an innovation in some place can be taken to another place and be modified, right? And improve and adjust. And I think that Bitcoin has so much capability of giving us, like this opportunity to really create and just make it our own resource to solve the problems.
If you look at let's say the Bitcoin community in Germany, it looks nothing like the Bitcoin community in Texas. All right, they're going to approach the tools and the technology in a completely different way. That's true for pretty much every geographic location, jurisdiction, whatever, around the world. And how people are going to approach it and say, okay, this is an interesting tool. How am I going to apply it to the problems that I have locally? Is a really fascinating thing to see. I mean, in the early days, we had, I would say, challenges around language barriers, right? Documenting the technical specs in different languages was a project that people worked really hard at just to get the proper resources out there for folks. But it's come a long way, and it's interesting. I feel like it's just beginning.
Yeah, and I think if I can add something that solutions are created out of challenges, and the countries that we come from have a lot of problems, right? And so that's why you have this innovation, this growth, but it actually has an impact on countries like the United States and other places where they are more democratic and more free, is because maybe the challenge that we see in our countries, they come to you later on. And one being privacy, for instance, being able to, the surveillance that we live in. These are issues that, maybe it's not your government attacking you, but surveillance is happening in the United States.
Sure.
Surveillance happening in Europe. Some of these issues people are gonna have to reconcile this later than we have started having to reconcile with them. But the knowledge and the innovation that comes from our country because of our challenges, I do believe will help other people as well too that do not come necessarily from difficult places. They can be adapted from less difficult places where you are.
Thank you for saying that. Sometimes there's a bit of sadness in talking about how important it is as an American, right? It's enshrined in our Constitution. The Fourth Amendment has been, I would say, pretty badly beaten over the years between the Bank Secrecy Act and the Patriot Act and expansions for KYC, AML. We had a debanking wave, not nearly on the same level as some of the places that we're talking about in this conversation. But hopefully we're able to learn a lot of those lessons and remember like why it was enshrined in the Bill of Rights in the first place. I wanted to come back. Well, actually, I'll leave this one open. We talked about Bitcoin as a tool against things like debanking and financial apartheid, and we touched a little bit on let's say KYC and remittances and protecting one's privacy. The other technology that we've been looking at a lot in these groups is Nostr and digital identity and having more control over one's voice when they are organizing, disseminating information to a group that wants it while preserving privacy and not just trusting a platform, kind of like a bank, right? Like, when you look at Facebook and Instagram and all of those other ones, they have the same powers, maybe even more so than a large bank to shut you off, at least here in the US. Can we talk a little bit about the impact and the power and potential? Nostr is still very, very young and in its infancy, but holds great power and potential if it continues to grow the way that Bitcoin did.
Yeah.
I'll leave it open to anybody that wants to jump in. For
just
that
a thought. I know that this is a specialized podcast, and most of the people will be familiar with all of this. But I think it's important just to to start with the very basics. I think that Nostr is to communications what Bitcoin is to money.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? Well, it means that you own your money. You own your key. In the same way you own your key for your money, that you can decide if you put it into self-storage or custodial. The same applies to Nostr, that you can have your own key and you can keep it, or you can give it to a custodial that will keep that key. And what's the value of that key? Well, your followers. So you don't have an X or an owner of X or whatever platform to decide when you have access to your own followers. And it's the same concept that with the money.
Yeah.
And I think that solves a very important problem that I think people intuitively are seeing, that the platforms are increasingly deciding for you what you see, who sees you, and even without explicitly saying it, the algorithms are censoring because they're keeping away information that otherwise you would get. So they decide, what is it that your eyeball is being fed with. So,
and it varies by country, right? Like
It
other
varies.
countries, the terms and services in whatever
in
country
China,
are very
for
different.
TikTok, just for example,
Yeah.
my understanding is that the algorithm for TikTok in China is to reinforce the Chinese identity,
Sure.
to reinforce the love for the country, to reinforce the respect for the culture, to reinforce the commitment to abiding to the laws. So it's a very, we would say, constructive algorithm for the status quo. What is the algorithm in the US and elsewhere in TikTok? It feeds people who are angry, or people who are polarizing, or people who are looking for problems to fracture society. So yes, the algorithms end up determining the way you are fed by information, and that has an impact.
Yeah.
So Nostr solves that, being a protocol, like Bitcoin, like the internet, like email. It's a protocol. And then it has different ways of engaging with that protocol. There are called clients, or there are the windows into seeing that communication. One of the things that we are doing in the World Liberty Congress, we are building our own client. It's called Agora. And our reason for developing a client in Nostr is to solve two problems. One, the communication restriction that I was talking about, the possibility to communicate anonymously, which is very important, and the resource problem. So Nostr gives you the possibility of doing two things in one shop. You can communicate privately, owning your own keys to your own followers, to your own communications, and in that same account, you also have an embedded Bitcoin wallet. So for us, this is huge because one of the things that we hope to do, and we are in the process of building this, is that it could get to a point that we could say, there is a protest taking place in Iran, and we have, I don't know, 1 million people that are protesting in the streets that want to be anonymous. And you are here in Washington, D.C., or in Berlin, or in Madrid, and you're seeing what's happening. You're frustrated, but you look at the post of a woman who is challenging the regime by taking out the hijab, and she's being taken to prison, and you want to support their families. And now this would be an immediate way that you can sap the people from DC or Berlin or Madrid all the way to Tehran or Caracas instantly and have a direct impact. So I think that these are the foundations for what could be a decentralized way to not just communicate, but to communicate and send resources at the same time. At least that's what we hope.
Tents, medical supplies, it kind of can touch a lot of different
Well,
situations.
for example,
Yeah.
I think the humanitarian, imagine this. There is at least the maybe $50 billion that go into humanitarian aid annually. Most of that money, most of it, goes to the sustainability of NGOs and organizations that are here. There are plenty of buildings in this city that live through the money that should be devoted to the people, to the refugees in Cucuta, coming from Venezuela, or from Africa, or from any other place in the world. But 80 cents of the dollar stay in Brussels, in Geneva, in Washington, D.C., and only 20 cents of the dollar end up going to the end beneficiary. And what's the excuse? The excuse is that you need all of that red tape, all of that bureaucracy in order for that 20 cents to end up reaching the people. But now you can get rid of all of that bureaucracy, of all of that mediation, and go directly to the people who need it. So Nostr, Bitcoin, open source technology is flipping the pyramid.
Have you come across organizations? It's a big, I hesitate to call it an industry, but there's a lot of money at stake here. Have you come across NGOs or other humanitarian aid organizations that really don't like the concept of what you're saying around sort of the access directly, and they want to sort of keep some of the structures in place? You're talking about a lot of jobs, right, and a lot of flow of
I would
funds.
say all of them.
Huh?
Yeah, they don't say
I
it,
would
but
say
yeah.
all of them. They don't say it. But
That often.
yeah.
But let me tell you, and
Sorry,
I
a little
can say no,
controversial
but they're getting enthusiastic too. I mean, we NED is a case, right? Like they are trying to understand how to deploy
Sure.
more resources in a different way.
You are right.
So
First time I'm seeing that intellectual curiosity, because
Yes.
there's obviously a there, and it's been successful because of these case studies.
Exactly. Because they understand what is happening in the grassroots. And let me give you another more personal or more individual case where Nostr has a really significant value, and it's my own story. So before entering the human rights ecosystem, I was a TV anchor. I work on TV for many years.
The most famous TV anchor.
Morning show
Every morning
in Nicaragua.
The morning show in Nicaragua
There you
with
go.
Berta Valle. So
There you go. You watched it.
Yeah, I'm telling you, if you wanted
So,
to know about the weather,
There you
the
go.
updates,
Just come to me. So
the celebrities,
There you
the
go.
news. But then,
that's how Felix, no, I'm kidding.
oh,
So
it is true.
over 10 years doing television, all my work, right, was posted online. The channel station where I used to work, it's Channel 2. It was the largest TV network in the country. And because of the pressure of the regime, they ended selling the TV station to the regime. So I didn't hear advices when they told me to start saving my work, right? And I want to do it someday. And then the station was sold. So they erased all the content for more than 10 years of my work on TV because the regime didn't want my voice to keep being hearing in Nicaragua because people will recognize me, right? Like, oh, Berta Valle from Channel 2, right? And recently I was doing like a short documentary about my story, and they asked me for my work. And I went online, and I went to YouTube, everywhere. I couldn't find anything. It was erased. And the reason it was erased because, the business, they have control of it.
Sure.
And because the in the image, there was the brand of Channel 2, the regime claimed that material were theirs. So everything that I had in Facebook, in Twitter, in YouTube, it was gone. So now with Nostern, right, I learned that I have this opportunity to put information about my work or my ideas, whatever, and it cannot be removed.
Yeah.
And it cannot be censored. And that for me is so important because, of course, what happened to me and my work, but also when you are, as Leopoldo mentioned, like building movements. So for us in the human rights, seeking for justice, memory, la memoria, right? It's really important. So in the case of Nicaragua, in 2018, when we had this massive protest around the country and the regime killing people in the street, how do we report that? How do we say the memoir would be of what happened?
Sure.
It was online. People went to the street, they were recording. That's what we had as a case to show, to demand human rights, etc. What the regime did is go to Facebook, go to Instagram, Twitter.
Takedown requests, yeah.
And now we are trying, like the human rights organizations, UN, the Inter-American Court, they're seeking these videos and this material in order to follow up, for justice. And we realized that it's gone because people were so scared. They put down a lot of information, but also people are so scared that they start erasing their material that they used to have online. So now what we are teaching in Nicaragua, and I'm telling everyone, is go to Nostern, right? Any client, and upload the information, because there's a secure place where we can save our memoir of everything that happened. And then when we have democracy, we can go and we can, demand the perpetrators are these violations.
Yeah, memorializing. It's kind of how Bitcoin works as well, and the power of that memorialization on Nostr through communications and owning your voice is great. You can't delete a bad like a tweet, basically. You can't delete a bad tweet that you put out there, a joke that doesn't quite land.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful with Nostr a little bit.
Yeah.
But it is really fascinating.
Yes.
And the other thing, though, with just to touch on one thing that you were talking about, Leopoldo. It's a lot of responsibility to own your identity and to hold your own Bitcoin, to self-custody, right? When you don't have a company to go to, it's new technology. And when people use new technology, there are countless stories of people losing their private key for their Bitcoin. There's been plenty of stories of people losing their private key for their Nostr identity after building an account. And it's happened.
So no, it happened to me.
I tell you my story. I found the private key it's scribbled on the back of like a lottery ticket. I was like, oh yeah, all right, I found it. Just a random scrap of paper. I was able to recover.
I opened my first Nostr account. I opened it, and this is 2 years ago. We were in Norway, and I remember I was with Matt Odell and Jack Dorsey and Gigi and other like very hardcore Nostr influencers, in a way. And they all, say, hey, this is Leopoldo, this is... And, I grew my account. I had, I don't know, around 16,000 followers. And I changed phones. And then my son erased the other phone. And I erased a key. And I made the mistake. And it's been a headache just to tell people that the account that has... thousands of followers, I can no longer access, and the other account that has few thousand is the one I'm trying to grow. So I think that was a good thing. Yeah. I always try to make a bad thing a good thing, right?
Resilience.
Yeah. So for me, it was a learning experience.
Yeah.
Just to know how delicate it is, to be aware that you have a stake in your own privacy, that you need to, that you need to do things in the right way.
I think it's fast. It's a new technology. People make mistakes. Sometimes, the developers, there could be issues that they don't know about until that mistake, rises to the top. Nostr feels like isn't quite ready for prime time, particularly with an activist like, on the ground. There are still some privacy concerns. Feel free to push back on that, though. I feel like Bitcoin is hardened to the point where the community and advocates and educators can confidently explain where the risks are and the touch points and everything. Feels like Nostr has a little bit further to go before encouraging an activist in one of these, I would say more intense situations to dive into it. Is that fair or different perspective?
We're getting there.
Yeah, we're
I think we're getting there. I didn't mean to be negative about
Let me
it.
show you.
It's not necessarily gonna. I mean, I'm not aware kind of the privacy concern with Nostr. I would say also with parents, exact same experience as Leopoldo in terms of getting a new phone and everything. I lost mine, and something that I realized that actually made me more aware of my own digital footprint and my own keys and knowing basically what platforms are you using. A lot of us are using platforms without really knowing understanding the why and how we use it.
Sure.
And I think Nostr has forced me to actually be more conscious, and that key of them, losing that key was the wake-up call. But going back to your question, I think that one of the challenges with Nostr so far is, we need people. When I was advocating for my dad who was in prison, I needed to say, we've done this today. We had this resolution by the U.S. Congress, and I need everybody to be able to see it. And right now, Nostr is a small community of people, and the challenge is how do we bring in the everyday folks to also use that as their tool to be able to have information. And I like the idea of Agora that we're working on. I think it's going to help bring that for the day-to-day to have knowledge. But from an activism perspective, for me, I want to use social media so I can put my word out there and everybody will know. And Nostr today, I don't have the ability just because the network is not there. But I think it's a question of time.
Yeah.
And it's not really a question of the technology itself.
It's brand new.
Little understanding of tech.
Yeah.
And now with what Berta just shared with her experience, I think it's just even like one more reason for us to really think about these tools and having a repository of your socials somewhere. If at least it's not to communicate, to shout out to the world what's happening, use that for yourself.
Yeah.
And this is something. And
it's incredible. Imagine going back and say, hey, no way, the regime in this date they committed this, and this is the evidence, right? Like for me at least, was so powerful to understand that I hope that we can keep building on that idea for our work.
So I want to be cognizant of time, and I want everybody to get a little bit of a breather and time for a beverage before the event. But I have two more questions that I wanted to get to. First one is, you got two books with you. What do we have?
There you go. Okay, I have two books. One is Pathway to Freedom, a handbook for the liberation of political prisoners. And the second one is After Liberation, handbook for the reintegration of political prisoners. So in the World Liberty Congress, we have a program, which is the Political Prisoner Support Network, where we support families of political prisoners in their process. But the way we do it is that we accompany families by what we have experienced. So the manual have simple recommendations on what to do if you have a loved one that had been arbitrarily detained for political reasons. And then from our experience, we realized that, after prison, the struggle doesn't stop, right? Like there is a rebuilding your life process that you have to go through. So the second manual is all about that. It's how to heal emotionally, physically, how to reintegrate, how to find a job after the struggle, not only for those former political prisoners that remain in their home countries, but also for those who have to go into exile, like our cases, right? How do you rebuild your life there? And in chapter 10, in the second handbook,
I noticed the second handbook is bigger than the first.
It's bigger because, we have more experience.
More complicated.
And more complicated, actually, because we speak for the families, but also for the former political prisoners.
Yeah.
So in chapter 10, we actually have the financial freedom through new technologies, where we suggest to have a Bitcoin wallet, for example, because we know that former political prisoners do not have access to banking. They don't have IDs. They don't have a legal status in their countries where they are. So we are actually putting it in the book. This is something new for us. And as next step, we want to keep, bringing this information to those who need it the most, but also bring in new tools, that can support families and former political prisoners.
And I'm biased here, but I have found the Bitcoin community online is a little bit messier, but in person, the Bitcoin community is super warm, super welcoming. So it's community out of the box. It's like finding new friends.
There you go.
Old friends that just met.
And by the way, these manuals are available online in our webpage.
Awesome.
So please, if someone knows a family of a political prisoner or a former political prisoners, recommend this. So they can use it. They can reach to us. We're here to support. That is what we do.
We'll be sure to put the link in the description for the video when it gets posted.
Perfect.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. Last topic. We'll try and do this one fast, even though it's probably the hardest one and the longest one to talk about, but it's AI. AI is super fascinating. It's taking over the world. It's making people really nervous, and it's going to destroy all the jobs, or we'll all be rich and happy, or who knows what's going to happen with this. But we're seeing it as an extremely powerful tool for both activists and authoritarian dictatorships. It still is pretty new as far as the tsunami of information that people are feeling like they're already left behind if they're not on the cutting edge of AI, and it's changing every single week. How do we approach AI from the activist perspective, from a humanitarian rights perspective?
Well, I think the most important thing is to be clear what problems you're trying to solve. So, you're trying to solve the resource problem. What's a problem that we face? Oh, we need to do a website. Well, the old way was that you had to invest maybe $20,000 to have somebody to do a website that would be functional, that it would work well. Or that you need to get resources, or that you need an app to communicate, or many other things that require a lot of investment, but also require a lot of time. So there is a huge value added to the work we do for activists, and this is true for any other case, that if you know how to use these tools, you can be on top of the game to do them quickly in 100 times less investment, and you can empower people. So we participated, both Berta and I participated in a hackathon that took place only a month and a half ago.
Yes.
And it was all about bringing activists and developers into a hackathon, and we had a problem. The activists, the developers were there to decide what program or what problem they were more inclined to help solve. And there were 8 teams. And now we have 8 groups that are using open source technology, including AI, to solve problems. In our case, we decided to focus in Ulster. So we created our client. And within a day, we had a new client called Agora that allows us to have internal communications, that you can have a global conversation, that you can decide what language you are going to read your information. So if someone is posting in Farsi from Iran, you can read in Spanish in Venezuela. Or if in the same space, you want to create the link between the Bitcoin community. As you said, I think that the Bitcoin community and the activist community at heart are fighting for the same thing, for freedom, for going around gatekeepers, for having privacy, for having ownership of your money, of your communication. So we are solving this, and we're doing it in a way that we are bringing together developers with activists and with a huge network of people that are in need to have these solutions. So I think a very important thing, and I always insist on this, is try to tap in people that have networks, because a lot of the Bitcoin education has traditionally been to educate individuals. And you can be an individual in North Korea or in Zimbabwe or in Nicaragua or in Rwanda. And yes, you can understand these tools. But if you tap into people who already have networks, you can immediately just give these solutions to thousands of people. And that's what we're doing through the World Liberty Congress. That's the way we are using this client in Nostr called Agora. And our idea is that this can be a smooth way of supporting thousands of people at moments of great need, at moments of elections, at moments of protest, at moments of internet shutdown. We are trying to put in the same space the communication solution, the resource solution, and also the connectivity solution. So we are also including BitChat. So if you don't have internet, you can connect through a mesh network in order to have people locally connected to do the same things that you're doing. So you are solving all of these problems in the same space. And AI is helping to aggregate all of this in a way that works, that is easy to use, and that is that it could be exported and massified in a very important way.
Yeah, for people that don't know, BitChat is kind of like a hyper-local Bluetooth mesh network where you don't need the internet or any data signal to send messages. I think it was pretty impactful during the elections in Uganda.
It was
Yeah.
impactful in Uganda when they shut off the internet like 2 days before
Yeah.
the elections happened. It was impactful in Nepal last year when they had a revolution. It was
Yeah.
impactful in Madagascar last year when the youth took over the streets. And those two countries are not free. And
Yeah.
one big part of the way people were able to talk when internet was shut down in those countries as well, it was BitChat. And so we've seen the success of that in Nepal
Yeah.
and in Madagascar, and I think
And in Uganda too.
And in Uganda as well, of course, yeah. But it was a
the
different
election
thing,
was
yeah.
stolen,
Mhm.
you know, and this is a good case to what I'm trying to explain. You had Bobby Wine, that we mentioned him before. So we told Bobby about the solution. He knew that internet shutdown was going to happen. So he was posting on his X account daily reminders. So he would say, daily reminder, download BitChat, because this is the way that we are going to overcome the internet shutdown. So 2.5 million people downloaded BitChat in Uganda. Why? Because you had someone who had a network that was telling their people that this was a tool to use. So this goes to the point that I'm trying to make, that we don't want to train just individual activists. We want to train networks, and we want to go and provide solutions to entire networks that have leadership, like Bobby Wine as an example, that can push these technologies. Because sometimes the developer community, the Bitcoin community, the technology community are so keen on the technology that they are obsessed by explaining to people why the technology works. But you don't hop into a car and figure out why the engine works. I mean, you go into a car because the car can take you from point A to point B. So if it works, you don't need to know why the engine works and how all of the pieces fall into place in order for the car to move. So that's where I think this intersection between developers, the tech community, and activists comes into place. There needs to be just the solution to the problem, not the explanation of why the technology works.
No, definitely. I don't know if you're going to add something else.
No, you can go.
So regarding AI, just to give you another example on how we are using it. So the way that we work with the political prisoner support team to reclutar, to get families, right, to support, is that we learned that there is a family member around any part of the world. We try to reach to them through the network. Then we give our information. We wait for this family member to get back to us so we can have the first conversation and offer the manuals. But that time we spend like, I don't know, maybe 1-2 months, right? But now with AI, we are developing an app, it's open source, that is going to help us to reach them, right, faster in their own language. We are going to receive in that first contact all the information about the family member and the political prisoners, and they are going to have the opportunity to have a chatbot, let's say, because the design, to ask questions about what to do in case in their cases. So it's going to solve our back office problem because it's something that we used to do manually.
Sure.
And also, we are going to be able to deliver this information, the advices from the handbook, in their languages. So, I mean,
so you can train. You can just basically feed in all your information and train the chatbot, train the agent to just basically give the information exactly how World Liberty Congress and other organizations would want
where
to
to find help, what to do, while we get in contact with them to. So that was not possible 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Now we have it. That's the power of AI when we use it in our work as activists.
It's mind-blowing.
And it's amazing. I just want to add one thing. I don't want to be the party pooper here, but I think what's important is that as we are growing kind of all these utility, at least in use cases that we found a problem and we have a solution, we need to make sure people don't feel afraid to use AI, because there is still quite a gray part, like what is an agent, what is this, what is that, and often people in the human rights community are like the last people who get to use these technologies, and I think we need to change that. And I think a lot of the work that we're doing with WLC and through all our partners like HRF is to really make sure that human rights defenders have also access to the latest cutting technology that everybody does. And for that, you need to also have a way to fill that gap. How do you pay for that? Can you pay in Bitcoin and to use have AI access? And so there's a lot of questions that we need to think about to make sure that the people who need it the most still get access to it and get to learn how to use it, because these dictators as well are also practicing how to use this, and they have much more money, more resources than us. So the number thing that Leopoldo is saying is really important, because if our people don't know how to use this technology for the problems that they have, and they're afraid of it, then we're gonna lose. So we have to also act fast and make sure that people have the exposure to this technology, and we need to think about it.
And something that I have learned, I don't come from the technology world, but I've been more and more drawn into the concepts of it. And we are now at a time that someone like me that doesn't know anything about coding, if you understand the concepts, you can use the tools.
Yes.
And that's super powerful.
Yeah, it's powerful.
So, I'm hooked into vibe coding now. And I'm doing things that I would have never thought I was going to be able to do. And you can just unlock immense possibilities. So look what happened with OpenClaw, the new thing, right?
Yeah.
So a single individual, I don't know where he's from. I don't know if he's Austrian.
Austrian, yeah.
I think it's Austrian. So he developed this open source approach to doing just vibe coding in a way that it's becoming viral, that people can own their own agent, just aggregate all of the different sources of AI. You can build your brain, you can build your body, you can build your hands, you can build your own thing and shape it. And that just happened over the past 2 months. Yeah. And this is unlocking possibilities for billions of people, but especially for people who are engaged, for people who are prisoners of doing things in a certain way that is limiting their possibilities. And that's why I think, at least for me, that getting more and more familiar with the possibilities of open source technology. I had heard a lot about open source. I really didn't know what open source was until you start using it. So let me give you an example. Just maybe a month and a half ago, we, at the same time, there were being protests taking place in Iran and protest elections happening in Uganda. In both places, there were Starlinks smuggled into Iran, and into Uganda. However, there was a gatekeeper. So in the same week, Starlink decided to give thumbs up to the use of Starlink in Iran. And that same week, because of the solicitation of the Ugandan dictator Museveni to Starlink to prohibit Starlink in Uganda, Starlink decided to give thumbs down to access to Starlink in Uganda. So the technology is there. People could have had access to internet in Uganda and in Iran, and for that matter, in every corner in the world, but there is a gatekeeper, somebody who decides if the technology is going to be used or not used. So open source technology should be also a solution to all of these problems. And I think, and this is another conversation, that there is
We could go on for weeks.
but there is an elephant in the room that I think is not talked about that often, that is free and uncensored access to internet. Because Bitcoin, Nostr, communication, it all needs access to internet. So there is a basic infrastructure issue that needs to be solved, that is access to uncensored internet and access to a basic smartphone. And I think that a lot of people should start looking at that infrastructure problem as a priority, because if we solve that, then all of the developers in Austin, in Silicon Valley, in New York, in Germany, everywhere where there are people in Austria, and anywhere for that matter, that are thinking about these solutions, could be actually used. If there is no access to internet, all of this will not be able to be used. And I think that the potential of AI will be a human right if and only if every single human being has access to free and uncensored internet.
And if I can just add that, because you're so good, but it's access to internet and then also being able to pay. And I think this is where Bitcoin comes into such handy. A lot of people don't have bank accounts, so you cannot put in your Visa to have access to the AI. Even so, you have internet, but then once you have internet, can you still pay for it? Can you still use it? And today, all these AI technologies you have to pay for them, right? Open source, you don't have to pay. And so there's a lot of education, and Bitcoin, the way it's been able to include people in the financial system, have been pushed out of it in millions. I think it's going to be huge. Connecting Bitcoin, this way of bringing people into the financial system and connecting them to AI, connecting them to this future technology that are going to change our world. If we don't do that, then it's only going to help one small part of the world. And the people who are on the autocratic countries are going to remain on the autocratic countries.
Yeah. Very well said. I mean, Bitcoin, Nostr, BitChat. I'm so happy you brought up BitChat and AI. Facilitate communication for culture and community. For a long time, I was part of this. Bitcoiners were so convinced that the technology and the financial underpinning of the technology was just always going to win. I completely disagree with that these days. Culture and community always wins, and if the culture and community is small and niche, it doesn't reach the people that need it the most. And we're all looking at these communication protocols and access to knowledge and expertise, accelerating that via AI. We could go on for days talking about what happened and why it happened with the internet protocols and how those choke points developed, and the financial system and all these other ones. But the thing that I love about these technologies and the through line that connects all of them is they're freedom enhancing, self-sovereign tools that could make us better, faster, and stronger. So I think we should probably leave it there, so we have a little bit of a break before the event kicks off. Thank you so much for being here, Anaïse, Berta, Leopoldo.
Thank you.
We'll have some fun.
And to all of you listening, if you ever come by Washington, D.C., come to PubKey. It's a great place. It's super cool. Great people. You will find the Venn diagram of Bitcoiners and activists and just regular people who want to have fun. So come here.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Amazing. I like it.
That was great.